Hi, everyone. It's New York Fashion Week, and we're going to explore what that has to do with science and what that has to do with me and you. My name is Sarah Longo. I am from Pittsburgh. I have a background in entrepreneurship and biology and fell into sustainable fashion after being a lover of clothes for a very long time. So I'm on the council here in Pittsburgh for Style 412. And I'm also the managing director for an air quality technology company called AirViz, which explores ultrafine particle pollution in both indoor and outdoor environments. And most recently, I'm a guest crew member of X Expedition, which is a UK-based organization that takes an all-female crew to sail across the world and do microplastic pollution research in our oceans. So, and then in turn, its effect on women's health. So this topic is especially important to me because I went through an egg freezing procedure last year, and this is actually my first anniversary of my egg freezing procedure. So I'm very excited to be having this conversation today. And I'm joined by two researchers from Magee-Womens Research Institute, which is the largest institute in the United States solely dedicated to women's research and reproductive biology. So Judy and Miguel, would you please introduce yourselves?
Great, thank you. Nice to join you, Sarah. I'm Judy Yanowitz. I'm an associate professor, and my work focuses on understanding the molecular basis of human infertility, but I model this in a microscopic worm because it can go from egg to adult in 3 days rather than 15 to 40 years. And we're really trying to understand the underlying mechanisms that cause chromosome missegregation, which is the leading cause of recurrent miscarriage and infertility.
Wow.
Hello, I'm Miguel. I'm assistant professor at Magee-Womens Research Institute, and my lab works in how we can protect and conserve the quality of the eggs from the moment that they were created in utero to the moment that we need to use them, and how environmental factors could be affecting this. This could be radiation, could be toxics, or could be things that are in the water, or the things that we're eating every day.
Great. And Miguel, you also have a background in design, correct?
Well, during many years in Barcelona, I used to have a one-of-a-kind boutique. So what we do is to do garments there. And what we used to do is also get the fabrics from leftovers. So we reuse what other designers used to create the one-of-a-kind pieces. Awesome. So fashion and science is something that it's merged in me, and I love it.
Right, I hear that. So I have a bunch of questions to work through. Miguel, maybe I'll ask you this one first. So what aspects of the fashion industry impact the environment?
I think that there are many different layers. It's like from where the products that we are consuming every day are done. It's because normally it's not in our countries or the countries where we are living. So it's how they're done or created, the chemicals that they use to create it, and how all these different aspects are influencing the health. In my case, in our case with Judith, we're interested in how these chemicals or other factors are affecting the reproduction. Clearly, there are like social levels, economical levels, but that is not our expertise. And what we want to explore today with you is how those little things that we probably think that is benign, it could be affecting long-term your babies or the babies or your babies.
Right, and sort of like you mentioned, the manufacturing and the distribution process for the fashion industry is pretty complicated. So we rarely see what goes into that. And when we receive our clothes, much of them, I think 60% of all clothes are made from synthetic materials. So that's a lot of plastic. And I know when we wash those synthetic materials that they tend to shed in the washing machine. And creating microfibers and microplastics that go back into the water system and into our drinking waters. And it's that cycle there. So when it gets back into our system where we start to see the effects on women's health, right? So Judy, can you talk a little bit about what kinds of effects these released plastic have on women's health?
Yeah, so it's been known for about 20 years that the degradation of plastics can lead to the release of, say, bisphenol A. And that's a strong estrogenic compound. And we knew from studies originally by Pat Hunt's group in mice and followed up by studies in many other organisms that this has major impacts, particularly on the process I study, chromosome segregation. And so even in animals exposed to bisphenol A directly, you can see impacts on eggs that had already been made. And this is what's really important, that, that it can impact a woman's pre-made eggs by influencing chromosome segregation of those ones that have been held for a long time in the animal. And so I think this is really important for us to study. And we also know that things like BPA for women's health can have an impact on breast cancer, and because of its estrogenic capabilities.
Right. And some of those toxic chemicals can actually be found in a blood test. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And so hopefully, I mean, more and more we're developing these tests to be able to understand them. The challenge is really proving which of the individual compounds. And so most of us are familiar with BPA-free plastics. But what's happened is that they've changed a methyl group, and now they have BPS. And we now know from studies that BPS has similar types of defects, both on eggs and on cancer predisposition or disposition. And so it's not that just the switch of one compound to another made it better. I really think removing plastics as much from our diets and from our exposures is really important.
Great. And I know even outside of textiles and our clothes, plastics show up in the fashion industry in beauty products and in packing material. So Miguel, at the beginning, you were talking about the manufacturing process. Can you talk a little bit more about where the plastics are found in the fashion industry?
I think that they're all over the place. So imagine that you're receiving a product that you buy either on Amazon or Target or Chanel. So the first thing that you get is like a massive box that is wrapped in plastic, that is wrapped with tape, that inside is another product with plastic, and then there's the bubbles and etc. So can you imagine how much effort was put in there just to create the plastic? We are not talking the dyes or the things that are in the fabric per se, it's just the plastics. And the first thing is like probably 80% of the people are gonna take that and throw it away. So those plastics will go to the environment, and then that's why we have the little fish bag that is a plastic bag, or straws in the ocean.
Right.
And I'm not talking about production of that plastic.
Right.
So next step is how it's affecting health.
Yeah. Something that I think is interesting is, especially in Pittsburgh, we never think of ourselves as a coastal town because we're not next to the ocean. We're quite far away from it. But we have rivers that flow down, connect through the Mississippi, which dumps into the Gulf of Mexico. So we actually are directly connected to the ocean. And like you mentioned, those straws and the plastic bags and all this packaging material that we're throwing away, if we're not disposing of it properly, it can end up in the environment. And as it travels down through those waterways, they break up into small, and they hit rocks and get tossed around. And so those bigger pieces of plastic break into smaller pieces of plastic, and that's what makes microtoxins, right? And then when animals eat those, and then we in turn eat animals or drink the water, then right, that's how it affects us directly too.
I think that the fact that the microfibers is something new that we are already trying to know what is happening, but it's more probably as first thing is like, imagine that plastic bottle that is in the water, and then it will be exposed to the sun. And when the sun hits that bottle, will be releasing BPA, that was a toxic that Judy was explaining.
Right.
So yes, it's really interesting to see how this could be break and generate the microfibers. But I think that probably the first like red flag will be with how these plastics are interacting with water and sun and changing temperature, and they're releasing the chemicals, because those chemicals will be affecting clearly the fish, but also the people that is eating that fish.
Great. Judy, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I want to say that the major way that that we as individuals are getting exposed to this is from the food and the water that we are drinking. So it's critically important that we think about the impact both on our oceans, because that's a food source, but also the lakes and our fresh water, the microplastic are getting into the food that we eat. And that then is coming into us from fish, from meat, from normal water sources, excuse me. And so this is really, when we wash our clothes and those microfibers go in, they then can get back into us. And some of the problem is the breakdown, as Miguel mentioned. The other problem is that these microfibers are thought to accumulate toxins on their surface. And so other environmental exposures, such as, fertilizer. Yeah, that was the word.
Metals.
In particular, are some of the things that are accumulating on these microfibers. So you shouldn't think of it just as the plastic itself and what's released from the plastic, which is actually critically important, but also that these fibers and microplastics are accumulating other toxins in the environment that are being exposed into humans. And they're small enough. I think the thing that we have to think about is that these are small enough to get across the placenta. Mm-hmm. And so microfibers and microplastics can get into the fetus developing in a mom. And so when we're thinking about this, it's not just the impact on us directly, it's on the next generation and the generations after that. Because our children's reproductive organs are being developed. And so this is a very long-term exposure that we see in the present day.
Yeah, that's a really important point to mention. And that something similar happens with air pollution. So the smallest particles that we breathe in can pass through our nose hairs and get, deep into our lungs and then through our bloodstream and into the placenta, just like you mentioned. So I read a statistic in 2019 that said the fashion industry is the second or third most polluting industry behind oil and gas, which is really scary, right? And a big part of that is due to the manufacturing process and what the water usage and the amount of toxins that are used to produce these plastic chemicals to make clothes and make packing material. But another piece of that is what our consumption is and how we dispose of that. So like Miguel was mentioning before. So really important things. So let's pivot a little bit, talk about what we can do about it. So on an individual level, sometimes it's hard to think about how you can have a big impact on a problem that is so big. So Miguel, maybe we'll start with you. What kinds of changes could we make to ensure a healthier lifestyle for ourselves and cleaner consumption for the fashion industry?
Okay, cool. So I think that everything is trendy, so that is great. So a new trend that Z generation is adopting is really heavily is go to thrift shops and give a second life to garments, to clothes. And you can't imagine how the treasures that you can get in those stores. They're cheap, they're good quality, and you are helping, because I don't remember the numbers, but to produce a pair of jeans, you need to consume, 160 liters of water. So with this kind of new behavior, let's say in that, or trends, we can save a lot of water, protect a lot. And for example, I can say that in Pittsburgh, there are different stores like that. And one of these stores, the clothes line, also get this kind of clothes, sell it, but all the benefits from that store come to us in the Institute to help us to develop research. So it's like you're helping the environment, but also are helping to the people that is working to create new knowledge and new advances to protect the female health. So I think that reuse is a really interesting part. And you can make a total Gucci look from this kind of thrift shops like this. So
Amen.
That is a good one.
Right. So I walked into the clothesline like a year and a half ago, not really knowing that it had a connection to Magee-Womens Research Institute. And I cheated a little bit because I knew we were going to talk about this. But so I got the coolest raincoat that comes, like you said, you can get like a high quality look, right? I mean, look at this thing, right? and I got this secondhand. I was thrilled. And that's one of the best ways to be sustainable in the fashion industry is to not only donate your clothes as opposed to throwing them away, right? But buying secondhand. And I also know that Pittsburgh has recently been ranked as a top destination for buying vintage. We have a ton of options here. So we are perfectly positioned to shop sustainably and find really cool looks. Judy, do you have anything to add to this one?
Yeah, so I think one of the other important things that we should consider is how much plastic just generally are we using? So if we go back to Miguel's point about the fashion industry as a whole, one of the things we can do is buy local, right? He talked about having a boutique shop. And so if we could support the businesses locally, we're going to significantly reduce the plastics that are used in the packaging. And I think that's one really important way that we can do it from the fashion industry perspective. The other is in the individual use in our homes. And so I'm one of these proselytizers of the stainless steel water bottle or using glass. And every day when you put it in plastic, the hot water is degrading the plastic that's in your water bottle and you're drinking it. And so I think it's really important to think about what you're actually ingesting all the time to reduce the number of plastics, to not microwave in plastic, to get rid of, if you are doing that, to switch it out every year, make sure you're not washing it too much, because it's the abrasion of this that's actually increasing the degradation.
Right. So I also know, I know we mentioned the beauty industry earlier, but so if you check your beauty products, especially the face scrubs and the body wash that has the exfoliating beads in them. So often those exfoliating beads are just plastic beads. So I've started to go to the drugstore and check the back of the label to see like, oh, is this walnut or is this a plastic bead, right? Because I really don't want to be scrubbing plastic beads all over my face and then have them dump into the water system too. And then another thing so we talked about microplastic shedding. So in your dryers, there is using dryer sheets and there are filters and mechanisms to catch those smaller fibers and lint, right? In the washing machine, we don't have anything like that. So there is an organization that it's called Cora Ball, right? So they sell this, I should have brought it here, but they sell this ball that's like this big and has little arms on it that actually catches the microfibers in your washing machine. So you throw it in with a load of laundry, and when you pull it out, it really does work. It catches hairs, it catches small fibers, and then that way they don't go into the water system.
And what do you do with the things that you get from there?
So you're supposed to dispose of them properly. So throw them away in the trash, since we don't have a better way to do it right now. But as you mentioned, like one of the best ways to extend to be sustainable in terms of fashion is to extend the life of the clothes that we already have, since so much of what we own is made from synthetic material. So mending and repairing our items, donating them. There are now also collection bins even on the University of Pittsburgh's campus that will take textiles. So they'll take drapes, they'll take clothes, they'll take undergarments, and all of that they have a partner who will take all of that material to be reused into housing insulation. So coming up with unique solutions to extend the life of what we already have instead of over consuming. And I love Judy's point about shopping local too. That's another massive thing that we can do. So Miguel, any other best practices for buying clothes and other products that you can recommend?
I think that the first thing that I want to say is it's not bad to buy. So this is not let's shame the people that buys. Right. Let's think that there are like ways to do it, try to be conscious and think that the fact that the t-shirt, it's costing just $3 involves that it was produced for 1 cent of dollar in who knows where. Mm-hmm. And to create that low price, you are jumping many, many legislations about toxics and about many things that we don't really want to go there. So it's be conscious with what you want to buy and try to recycle the packaging and try to give a second life of the clothes. I think that is the easiest thing that we can do without spend too much time or with a lot of effort. And the other thing, if you give a second life to the clothes, it's that they will be unique. So no one else will have the same thing that you have. So from the fashion side, that's a cool thing.
That's true. I love that about shopping locally too. So Style 412 right now is towards the end of slow fashion season, which is basically a pledge between June and September to try to not buy anything new, but if you do, to buy from a reuse store, a vintage shop, or buy local. So those are two of my favorite ways to do that. And then one of the ways that I check into sustainable fashion when I'm looking to buy something new is to just read up on the brands. So for example, I really like J. Crew's clothes, and I've made a conscious effort to go on their website and look at their policies for sustainability and see if they even have one, number one, but number two, what they say, right? And how transparent they are about their manufacturing processes and what they pay their workers and how they package their material. So there is an organization called Fashion Revolution that publishes a fashion transparency index where you can get lots and lots of different information on how sustainable these big brands actually are. So, Judy, anything else to add in terms of what we can do?
Sure. So I guess I think what you're really saying is that we should all be informed consumers. And so just like we care, just like when we go into a supermarket and we care what ingredients are in the food that we eat, we should give the same look at the clothes that we're wearing and how that clothes is made, or when we're buying it. So where is it made? Who's making it? And understand that sometimes we have to pay more for organic food, and sometimes we may have to pay more for clothes that are made sustainably. And you know, we can say that plastics are bad, but they are pervasive in our society. And fortunately, the large plastics company recognize, because consumers are asking for this, that there needs to be changes. And they're starting to think about biological ways or combining it with bioproducts. And we can see that in, you know, products like the North Face is now using that for its synthetic fibers. And so I think this is really an important way that we need to just be conscious of what's happening and read the labels and invest in the time in thinking about what's the company that's doing this and are they doing it sustainably.
Right.
Yeah, I like to say that cheap now could be really expensive later. So that $5 t-shirt will be like, you're gonna use it 3 times and then it will be crap. But also it will be affecting next generations. And I like to say too that don't be selfish, and remember that the quality of the eggs of your daughter are created or done before her birth. So don't be selfish. Taking care of yourself is taking care of your next generation.
Yeah, that's been really important for me, who hopes to have kids one day, has gone through the egg freezing procedure. So thank you both. Any last minute thoughts before we close? No, thank you. This was such a great conversation. Miguel, I loved your last point there. I think I have been a lover of clothes for so long, and loving clothes doesn't mean you have to have lots of them, but making sure that you buy smart and take care of what you have. So washing things properly, mending and repairing things, and then making sure you're buying natural fibers, right? Because those not only have an impact on us, but on future generations, and have those synthetic materials have quite a long life. So thank you everyone for joining today. We've discussed quite a lot and received some great pro tips from these two researchers at Magee-Womens Research Institute. If you have a chance, stop by the clothesline. They have some awesome stuff. But I hope you'll continue to learn and to help push the fashion industry to be more sustainable. So thanks, Judy and Miguel.
Gracias. Thank you.